I can still close my eyes and hear the way those songs first arrived, soft at first, like a mountain breeze slipping through the aspen leaves high in the Rockies, then stronger, until they filled the whole room and demanded to be written down. People used to call me the face of the 70s, and maybe there was some truth in that. I never set out to become anyone's symbol. I simply sang what lived inside me, a little pop, a little rock, the folk that had settled in my bones, and the long country roads that always seemed to lead me home no matter how far I wandered. What still amazes me, even now, is how those songs left my hands and found new voices, new lives in the mouths of people I had long admired. They became travelers, carrying pieces of my heart into rooms I never entered. One of the earliest of those travelers was a song I called For Baby. I remember writing it in a quiet hour, the kind when the world outside has gone still and the only sound is the scratch of pencil on paper. It came out fierce in its tenderness, the way love can feel when it is almost too large to hold. The Sandpipers found it in 1967. They wrapped it in those soft, floating harmonies of theirs in a gentle orchestral shimmer that made the whole thing feel like walking slowly through rain beside someone you never want to let go of. Their version rose to number 3 on the easy listening chart, and I can still picture the way the radio used to play it in the evenings, the melody drifting out of open windows across quiet streets. Years later, when I finally recorded it myself for Rocky Mountain High, I gave it a fuller name, For Baby, For Bobby, for my friend Bobby Wargo, the songwriter who had somehow become the living heart of the song. I sang it slower then, quieter, the way you speak to someone who is already gone yet still breathing inside you. I love you more than anybody can. Those words still catch in my throat when they rise. Sometimes I think the song was never entirely mine. It was always meant to walk beside someone, whether that someone was Bobby or the listener sitting alone in a darkened room. Then there was the song that seemed to open a door I hadn't known was there. I first put Leaving on a Jet Plane down in 1966 on a little homemade demo, calling it then Babe, I Hate to Go. It was just me and a guitar in a small room that smelled of coffee and wood smoke, trying to capture a particular ache, the bag's already packed, the ticket folded in a pocket, the person you love standing in the doorway looking at you as if the world itself were about to split open. I sang it low and careful, almost afraid of the feeling it carried. Peter, Paul, and Mary discovered it, and they turned it into something larger than I had ever imagined. Their version became the only #1 hit they ever had. When Mary's voice rose on that chorus, I'm leaving on a jet plane, you could feel every goodbye that had ever been spoken in an airport terminal at dusk. I recorded the song again later for Rhymes and Reasons, but their version was the one that lived in people's hearts, the one that seemed to travel farther than any plane could take it. After the group broke apart, Mary went out on her own and asked me for another song, the way an old friend might ask for a letter. I gave her Follow Me. It was quieter, more vulnerable, a simple plea from one soul to another. Walk with me, stay with me, understand the places I must go. It reached number 56 on the pop chart in 1971, her only solo hit. I always felt a special kindness toward that song, knowing it had helped carry her into a new chapter when the old one had closed. In 1973, a television movie called Sunshine came along, based on the true story of Jacqueline Helton, a young wife and mother fighting bone cancer with a grace that still moves me when I think of it. The filmmakers filled that story with 7 of my songs: Sunshine on My Shoulders, Take Me Home, Country Roads, and others that seemed to fit both the light and the long shadow of her life. Out of that soundtrack rose an unexpected gift. Cliff DeYoung, one of the actors, sang My Sweet Lady. He gave it a raw, almost trembling passion, as if he were singing not just the notes but the very breath of the story itself. People answered. The song climbed to number 17 on the Hot 100 and number 7 on the easy listening chart. I had recorded it myself a couple of years earlier on Poems, Prayers and Promises, and when I re-released it later, it only made it to 32. Cliff's version somehow belonged more completely to that tale of love and loss. Hearing it on the radio felt like watching someone else live inside a song I had written in a quieter hour, when the mountains outside my window were still dark and the first light had not yet touched the peaks. Even Frank Sinatra reached for one of mine when the times were shifting beneath his feet. The chairman of the board, the voice that had defined so many decades, was looking for a way to speak to a newer audience. In 1976, he recorded Like a Sad Song, a ballad I had written for my album Spirit. He wrapped it in those rich, moody strings and woodwinds, that unmistakable phrasing that could turn a simple line into something almost sacred, and took it to number 31 on the easy listening chart. Sometimes I feel like a sad song Hearing him sing those words was one of the strangest and most humbling moments of my life. It was as if the song had traveled farther than I ever expected and found a home in a place I never dreamed it would reach. I remember sitting alone in a quiet room the first time I heard his version, the lights low, the mountains outside still holding the last blue of evening, and feeling a kind of grateful wonder that something so personal could become so shared. Looking back across those years, I see these songs not as possessions, but as travelers who left me and kept walking. They found other voices, other rooms, other hearts. They carried pieces of whatever I had managed to put into them, the ache of leaving, the fierce tenderness of loving, the quiet plea to be followed, the soft light that falls across a lady's face into places I myself never stood. That, more than any chart position or gold record, is what I always hoped for, that the music would keep moving long after I had set the guitar down, that it would keep saying the things we sometimes cannot say with ordinary words. And so the songs went on, and in their going they took a little of me with them, the way a river takes the mountain snow and carries it down to the sea.